Jesus wants to speak, so I'm going to speak with Jesus. Come, divine will, come speak in my speaking. Come listen in our listening. So this is continuing the diary entry of the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. If you recall what Pope Pius the 12th in his document on Christ the King, the 11th, it's on my shelf. You know who I mean, because I was talking about it a few weeks ago. He said that the Church gives these feasts in order to catechize us. So you've had the feast, now we study the catechesis on the feast. And this is what Louisa is writing. And what I love about Louisa is this is Jesus teaching us about what the feast really is all about. So this is again Diary 25, Entry 12, December the 8th, 1928. After this, later in the day, the confessor read in public was written in the 15th volume about the Immaculate Conception. And my beloved Jesus, in hearing him reading, made feast in my interior. Now, folks, Jesus hears everything. He hears everything. Think about it, This is like Louisa presenting us with a reality. Okay, a reality that as you're listening to me speak now, Jesus is listening with you. He's present to every one of us in our interiority. He's there. He's really there. And he's with us, listening in absolutely everything we say and everything we do. Not to instill fear of us, but here he makes feast. And he told me, my daughter, how content I am. Today it can be said that my sovereign Mama receives from the Church the divine honours, as she, the Church, honours in her as the first act of her life, the life of the divine will. So the Church is honouring, through the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, the Church is honouring in the Blessed Virgin Mary the first act of her life, the life of the divine will. When, think about it, in everyone else, original sin takes a hold on that moment of conception. With the Blessed Virgin Mary, the divine will took hold of her in that first moment. These are the greatest honours that can be given, that the human will never had life in her, but always, always the divine will. And therefore, think about yourselves and the fact that because you've given God your fiat, this is the greatest honour that God can bestow upon the soul, that the divine will would reign in you. This was the whole secret of her sanctity, of her height, her power, her beauty, her greatness, and so on. And don't forget, folks, all of those, the height, the power, the beauty, the greatness, it was all interiorized. No one else knew. No one saw it. Not even the apostles knew that Our Lady had the gift of living in the divine will. They knew nothing about it. Or if they did, they didn't disclose it. Or maybe they just wouldn't have understood it, because it wasn't for their time. It was my fiat that with its heat extinguished the stain of original sin and conceived her immaculate and pure at that very moment. And my Church, instead of honouring my divine will, primary cause and prime act, honoured the effects of it and proclaimed her immaculate, conceived without sin. It can be said that the Church gave her human honours, not divine honours, which she justly deserves, because the divine will had continuous life in her. You might say, why did the Church not honour the divine will in the Blessed Virgin Mary? Because the dogma wasn't proclaimed until 1854, and the time of the divine will had not come. So the Church did not know about the life of the divine will, not until Louisa started writing And she didn't really start writing on the divine will probably until 50 years after the dogma of the Immaculate Conception had been proclaimed. It wasn't the time. Now it is. Now we can read it. Now we can gain greater revelation on this. And this was a sorrow for me and for her, because neither did I receive from my church the honours of a divine will dwelling in the Queen of Heaven, nor did she receive the honours due, because she gave within herself the place in which to form the life of the supreme fiat. Therefore, today, by making known that everything in her was a prodigy of my will, and that all of her other prerogatives and privileges were in the secondary order, and as consequence of the effects of that divine will which dominate her, it can be said that today it is with decorum, divine glory, and magnificence that the feast of the Immaculate Conception is celebrated, a feast which more truly can be called, this is the name Jesus wants for it, the conception of the divine will in the sovereign Queen of Heaven. And this conception was the consequence of everything it is and it did, and of the great prodigies of this celestial little girl. Now, as I'm reading this out, and I'm thinking through what Jesus has done in the Blessed Virgin Mary, I'm then thinking about the breathtaking gift that Jesus has given to us, who are sinners. The Blessed Virgin Mary wasn't. We are. And how incredible that God now fuses this soul into such weak, wretched sinners like us. And He can now, through the power of the divine will, sanctify us to a greater extent at this time in the church than could possibly be comprehended. So let's give our fiat. Just keep giving our fiat voluntas tua.